This is the introduction to carving a comfort bird. This video will cover all the things that are not carving. I'm going to cover where I got the pattern from, the pattern, how you transferring it to templates and that, and then cutting out the pattern, making the blanks. Treating the blanks with alcohol, a water alcohol mix to to make it easier to carve. Safety, a little on wearing glove and then watching some nice grip videos, and the knives that I use are, anyhow, we'll go over the knife, and then finishing the bird, sanding and finishing. The comfort birds I make them from a pattern from North Idaho Carver Ed Kantola. I will put a link to that in the description. And so I take that, and as if you can see the pattern here that's online, it's quite huge, and I have to reduce it around 50% for the for the thing. So just it's up to how you print it and thing. I reduce it to what the size is, and I have them in 1.5 inch square for 1.5 inch square stock, and for 1 3/4 inch square stock, because that's what I seem to have. I paste them to plastic and then cut it out and put sandpaper on the back. The sandpaper is optional, but it does make it easier to hold them on the stock while you're tracing around it. The way you use them is you just put them on a blank, center them up, and then trace around them. And then I use a square for the second side, I use a square to make the beaks in the same spot, and then so a square line around it before I can line up the beaks. And that's how I make blanks. The next step is sawing them out. Leave that those. So here's the blank to start with, and you saw out one side, and then in my case, or the way I do it, is I put hot melt glue on the corners away from where the pattern or from the bird is. That way it just falls apart when you're done. And like here, and I put the hot melt onto the pattern or onto the waist block first. It sticks a little less hard on that, or if you do it that way. And then I do that to all 4 of the pieces that came off of it. So at that point you have, after the bandsawing, you have blanks, and then any blank that's not basswood, and I make birds, I've made birds out of maple, gum, pine, poplar, walnut, cherry, and everything but the basswood. It helps if I treat them with alcohol and water. The way I do that is I put them in quart jars, and here there's 4. The focus went away. Anyhow, there's four of them in this quart jar. You just, to treat them, you just pour the alcohol in. And probably don't need to do this, but I'm going to show you anyhow. And shake it around, and then dump it out, put the lid back on, and then let them set for at least an hour, and then you can repeat that. It takes 3 or 4 treatments. Depends on the wood species. The harder woods like maple and cherry and walnut take more treatments. The pine and poplar take less. So just learn your woods, or learn what you think. If you try carving a piece and it seems too hard, just put it back in that alcohol and try again. Okay, that's the end of blank thing. You get 4 of them for less than $13. They seem to last for me. They're just plain Kevlar gloves. You can get them with stainless steel wire reinforced, which are a little more safe. You can get them with the little plastic dots and help you hold a little bit. But they're important. They will save you. I've been carving for over 3 years now, and the other day I had a slip and I cut through the glove but didn't cut myself, and I'm quite sure it saved me a trip to the hospital. The other thing on safety, I want to learning the carving grips is a big part of the safety in carving. There's a really good set of videos out there by a Swedish carver. They're called the Swedish Knife grip sessions. If you just search for that, you'll find them. I'll put a link to them also in the description. They're overkill because he goes through everything, like for spoon carving and total wood carving. But the only grips you really will use is the thumb grips, or the thumb push grips, and but I think his safety warnings and everything make it well worthwhile. And in a little over a half hour, you can look through all of them. The knives that I use some homemade knives, but the Floyd 120, I think, would be the Sloyd, I think is how you say it, as close as I can get to saying it. Is a carving knife, and the 120, which is a 2 1/4 inch knife, would probably be the best for the birds. It's safer to use a shorter blade if you can, or if you're just starting out. The standard 106 will definitely work. It's a longer blade. It's like a 3 1/2 inch blade. But anyhow, any good knife, you could use a paring knife as far as that, or a pocket knife. But a good knife is you sharpen well. There's sharpening videos on the internet. So, annoying phone. Okay. And the other thing is finishing. When I've done carving, I sand them with 150 and 220. And you don't need to sand if you like the feel of the carved facets. That's fine. I like the smoothness, and you can take out some of the tear out and stuff that you have left if you haven't done so well carving. But anyhow, I put on 3 or 4 coats of Danish oil finish, or a homemade Danish oil finish. And then I buff them with a bill buffing system. But that's overkill for most people, or if you don't have that, there's no reason to get it through these. The simplest finishing that I've done on them myself, and it works well, is just using something like a furniture paste wax, and just put on a rag and put 4 or 5 coats of that on, and just until you have the feel that you would like. Well, thanks. I hope you enjoy the rest of the videos, and thank you. Bye. This will show how to mark up the cutout. Um, I start off by marking a center line on the top and bobbin. Um, I for the top, on the top of the head, I use my hand with the pencil to guide to find the center. So I draw the two marks, and then the center line's in the middle of that. And then I just by eye pick a spot on the tail for the center, and then the beak is the center for the front. So then I just add the line between them. And these guidelines don't need to be perfect, they just need to be close. It just helps you make the carving more symmetrical. Now I've started the same thing for the bobbin. I'm got the two lines for the center, and then mark a tail, and then we'll connect them. Okay, then I'm going to add it's not really a center line on the side, but it's like what would be the top of the wings. Someplace behind the head, I mark a center point on that, and then I go from the bobbin of the beak to the to the center all the way down to the tail, and then I'll repeat that for the other side. Find the middle, and then draw from the beak to the tail. And now I'm going to draw midway points on the bobbin and the sides. In this case, on the side, it'd be midway between the wing line and the edge of the bobbin of the carving. And here I'm just guessing at the middle, just giving myself some marks to go by when I start drawing in the lines. So now I'm going to just stay in the middle, and this I don't know if how well you can see the lines, but anyhow, then I do that for all four sides, or yeah, three sides. Okay, and then the last set of lines I make is someplace on toward the edge of the head. It's sort of where the head, what would make a round top to the head. I mark a line to help us when we take off the waist on the side of the head. You can adjust this later, but that's just a starting point. And that's the end of marking it up. Okay, from the last video, or the putting on the lines video, with the pencil I didn't think you could see it very well, so I outlined them with a Sharpie, so you should be able to see the layout lines better. Okay, and then for the carving, I stained it so that you can better tell where I actually did cut. So on this video, we're gonna carve off the corners on the bobbin of both sides. between the two midway point lines, or between the, well, it's 4 lines. So that's what we're going to do right now. And most of the time I use I think it's called a pull cut or push cut. I'm holding, in this case, like I'm holding my thumb and then twisting the knife or turning the knife. So the thumb is moving some, but it's not doing all the movement. A lot of the movement's coming from the fact that my right hand is moving the knife. Like right there, my thumb is, it's moving, but it's basically holding it still. And like you can get a lot of power, and you have a fair amount of control with that, because it can't go, that's about as far out as you can go. It's not going to go out and hurt you. And now that's the one side is done, and I'm going to just do the same thing on the other side. Okay, there's the corners knocked off, and then we'll proceed to rounding over the back. Okay, now that we've have the corners knocked off the bobbin, yeah, okay, now we have the corners. I don't know, hopefully you can see that the corners are the 45'd off. We're going to just continue with rounding the bobbin over. So we'll just start, continue that to make it round. Here again, I'm using a push cut. I think they have a more complicated name for it, but anyhow, I'm just using my thumb to push the knife into the wood. As you can notice, I'm cutting most of the surface of the whole bobbin there. It just trying to get it rounded up. And on the part here behind the main body, it is rounded from the center line to the center line of the side, and so I don't know. It's just more. The center is more of a ball, or the breast and the main body of the bird is more of a ball, but this part back here is a lot more oval. And on the tail, I don't get too carried away about, at this point, getting the tail down to final dimensions, because I've had trouble if I try to get it close. The tail gets too thin before I get done, so I wait until I have both. I work on both the tail on both sides at the same time, or try to finish them from both sides. And if you can see, that's pretty well one half of it rounded over. Now I'm just going to round over the other side. And a lot of times I leave the center line. I don't necessarily go to the center line. Um, I might clean it up here. There's no true reason to leave it. It's just that it's nice having that center line around, so that when you're rounding, that you kind of leave that the high spot. And then again here I'm kind of making a swag behind here. Okay, there's the bobbin rounded over except for the very middle of it. I left the center line in. Okay, this time we're going to round over. Okay, I'm not sure how it's showing up, but we're going to cut off the waist here on the side of the head, from the wing line up to the marks that we put on the top of the head. So we're going to remove a lot of that area in there. This pine cuts pretty good, except where you're totally going across the grain, hitting the grain lines all the way across. So this one's a bit of a pain here. And if you notice, I'm kind of coming in and sweeping up with mainly the tip of the knife. Okay, so that's the one side pretty well knocked out, and then we'll do that on the other side. Oh, it cuts much better on this side. That wasn't good. Okay. That has the side of the head cleaned up a little bit on both sides here. Okay, we have the sides of the head started. Now we're going to come behind the head and clean up back in behind it. This removes a lot of wood out of the way so that we can get ready to do the final cuts for the side of the head. This area in here between the top of the wing and the head is the hardest part of this carving. It's hard sometimes to make that curve. We'll get to that later, but sometimes the grain will be such that I've had to use a gouge to get that out, that I couldn't make the curve. But 95% of the time I can carve the whole burr with a knife. But there's a few blanks just don't want to carve that way, so a gouge will do that. But anyhow, right now we're going to carve out this waist behind the head, and maybe get up into the head a little bit, but mainly getting the waist behind the head out. Okay. Well, this blank is going to be tougher. Normally behind the head you can just carve down, but the grain isn't working that way for me. I'm going to have to come in from the other direction. Now I'm trying to make it sweep because it's going to go from the wing line all the way that's going to be rounded up to the center line. And I'll just rough out the tail area. I'm going to leave that for later. We'll come in and clean that up and thin that out some. And now I'm going to come in here and clean this up somewhat. I don't know if I'll get all, I'll try to get all of it here. Get the top of the wing defined. And like I say, this is probably the hardest part of this whole carving, is getting this area above the wing, because you want a nice flow in there. And anyhow, it just makes it, it's just, there's no place else on here is really that hard to carve. It's just rounding over in general. But that, you do have to use the tip of the knife and come up. Sometimes you have to go down, so it doesn't always carve from the bobbin up. The wood will tell you which way that if you can't try to carve that way. But so this has got that pretty well done. The upper part of the wing is close to being done. Later when we get more of it done, we'll feel it, and it'll tell us from the feel what else needs to come off there. So now I'll just do the same thing to the other side. It was working good. Oh, there we go. It doesn't really want to be done from the bobbin up. Oh, that works better from the top down. Except for that one little corner there. We'll get that. Okay, see if we can. Okay, so we've got the sides of his wings and his tail kind of cleaned up. And that's it. Okay, our blank has been rounded over on the bobbin. We have cleaned off the sides, almost done in this case. The tail is the top is fairly rounded over. The tail would need some work yet, but we're going to start on the head. We're going to, in this case, we're going to chop off at a 45 the head, kind of like we did on the bobbin, and then we'll round over the head just in the front to back plane, and then we will proceed to round over in on the front and the back of it. So we'll start, like I say, with taking off a 45 and then just take a couple more cuts on both sides to round over the head. So now it's rounded basically rounded in the front to back plane. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side. Okay, now we have the head pretty well rounded over in those planes, and I'm going to go ahead and start on the front of the head, round it around, and also clean up the top of the beak. And the side of the beak. And give it a little triangular shape to it. Okay, that looks good for now. Okay, now I'm going to do the back of the head. And blend it in with the rest of the body. And the same on the other side. Okay, I'm going to knock these corners are pointed yet. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and go to the tail and clean up the tail and round over the tail from both sides. Just kind of clean up a little and probably make a cut around it to get rid of all the bandsaw marks on the tail, on the outside of the tail. So I'm just going to get good clean cuts here. Sometimes this area of the tail the grain will change right in the end of the tail, and so you got to be real careful about how it wants to, sometimes you'll have to come in from the back of the tail to get that end. This one was working good on both sides, so I can't show you if I'm coming in from the other side, but just be aware that a lot of times it'll work good all up until the last half inch of the tail, and then you have to come in from the opposite way. So just be careful coming up to the end of the tail. Okay, I'm going to knock the corners off just a little more. When we sand it, you can knock the corners over more. If you sand it, you don't have to sand them. Okay, so I'm just going to clean up the sides, get rid of the center line and round up the sides. And all the way up into the wings. Okay, in front, or from the middle of the head forward, I trim out in front of the wing, or make the front of the wing in that area. So like this. Let me get on the camera. Yeah, there we are. This area in here, where my thumb was there, or from my thumb forward, needs to be taken down, and the same on the other side. Just come in here and take that out and clean that up. And I'll make it, since we're here, we'll make a cut there. Okay. Now I'm going to clean up the right side. Okay, the carving is basically all the hard, or not hard carving, but all the basic carving is done. Um, Now I go around and feel, like I can feel right now that like the point of this wing just feels like feels sharp, so I always come in here and take a couple small cuts and take that sharpness out. And especially on the front of it, you want it to feel good in your hand. It's called a comfort bird. It's meant to be held and meant to be moved around. So anything that doesn't feel good to you, just work on it or cut it up. Basically, all you can do is cut it off. You can't put it back on. But so just kind of feel of it, and like this feel that's got a ridge in here, I'm going to take that out because you can feel that. So anyhow, the rest of the carving on this is just going around and feeling, and places where the are just a little, the carving things are just a little rough, we just clean them up and make it feel good for a comfort bird. So I think that's going to be it for it now. Like I say, it's just a matter of making it feel good to you and finishing it. You can finish it with wax or other finishes. I'm going to leave that to somebody else. Well, thank you.